Hello, and welcome to Precon Decon, the video series where I deconstruct the pre-constructed decks of Magic the Gathering's history. In this video, we're going to look at the last deck from Betrayers of Kamigawa, which is Spiritcraft, green-white deck here. So let's start looking at the deck list. So we've got 23 creatures and 13 instants, and that's it. And 24 land, obviously, and we have mana curve off to the side there. So yeah, let's just dive in, start looking at the cards. So, first up, we have these two flip cards. Now, there had been flip cards already in Kamigawa, these kind of proto dual face cards. But Betrayers had this cycle of flip cards where they all started off as 2/2s for 3 mana. And I guess the whole idea is they start off as mortals who become spirits, which is kind of a cool idea. But yeah, as I say, they're all 3 mana for 2/2s. Whenever you play a Spirit or Arcane spell, colloquially known as the Spiritcraft ability, you can put a key counter on them, and at the end of turn, if there are 2 or more key counters on them, you can flip them into their spirit form. And that is optional, flipping them, because you may want to build up key counters on them because they all use key counters to pay for different effects. So Badoka Pupil, 3 mana for a 2/2. He flips into Ichigar, who topples Oaks, who is a 4/3 legendary spirit, has trample, and remove a key counter from him to give a creature +2/+2 to end of turn, which is pretty fun because you'd flip this. He's got 2 counters on it. He'd flip to come 4/3. I mean, you could swing with this, immediately take the key counters off, and make it like an 8/7 trampler, which would be, definitely not an awful thing to do. And then the white one, Faithful Squire, who becomes Kaiso, Memory of Loyalty. This one, I think this one's okay, not as good as Ichigar. So Kaiso is what, 3/4 flyer, which is, not terrible. And remove a key counter from it to prevent all damage that would be dealt to target creature this turn. So damage prevention is fine. In some ways it can be better than just a +2/+2. But I think of the two, I think Ichigar is a little bit better, so it is a shame that you only got 1 of him as opposed to 2 of Faithful Squire. So moving on, so I say a big theme of the deck is this kind of Spiritcraft ability. If you play a Spirit Arcane spell, an effect triggers. And we see a lot of that in this deck. Unfortunately, some of the cards on this screen aren't the best uses of it. So Horizon Seed, we'll look at that one first. 5 mana for a 2/1, with immediately terrible. Really awful stats. No other ability, nothing like Vigilance or Flying or anything like that. Just 5 mana for a 2/1. Whenever you cast a Spirit or Arcane spell, you regenerate a creature. Which is, it's not an awful awful side effect to have, but it's just the fact this on a 5 mana creature that's only a 2/1. Yeah, it's not great in my opinion. And the fact there's 2 of them in the deck is really a twist of the knife. And the other kind of not great one, I think, is Kami of Tattered Shoji, who's 5 mana for a 2/5. And whenever you play a Spirit Arcane spell, it gets flying until end of turn. So like the fact it's 5 mana with no abilities and you have to play Spirit Arcane spell to kind of make it semi-decent. Even then, it's not exactly a great attacker, it's only 2 power. This is also not great. It's just kind of, just a thing in Kamigawa that, there's just a lot of cards which are just overcosted and kind of underpowered. And these 2 cards, I think, really exemplify that. One of the rares in the deck, though, is pretty good. Oyobi, who split the heavens, who's pretty cool in my mind. So 7 mana for a 3/6 flyer. So kind of okay stats. Whenever you cast a Spirit Arcane spell, you make a 3/3 white spirit creature token with flying, which is, I think that is a good effect to have. The thing is, of course, she's 7 mana to get to play it, so you've got to kind of maybe then hold on to spells to make it worthwhile. Ideally, by the time you play this on turn 7, you kind of maybe are getting into the end game, maybe. But a couple of free tokens who are 3/3 flyers are definitely gonna, I think, tip the scale for you. So yeah, I think Oyobi is okay. And then we have 2 Waxmane Bakus, so 3 mana for a 2/2. When you play Spirit Arcane spell, you can put a key counter on it, and 1, remove X key counters from it to tap X creatures. So this is okay. It's kind of like, a variant of Master Decoy and like all those other kind of tap creatures we've seen before. Um, so I guess what this one does differently is that it maybe takes longer to build it up, but you could potentially pay 1 mana, and it doesn't tap to use its own ability. You can just pay 1 mana, take off all the key counters, and like potentially tap maybe like 2, 3, even more creatures, and like have a really big swingy turn where you get a load of blockers out of the way, or you stop an attack for a turn, something like that. So again, like Wax Main Baku's all right. He comes down, 3 mana makes him fairly cheap. Yeah, I think it's okay. I really wish this whole thing with key counters. I really wish that had been in Kamigawa like from the first block, because I think Betrayers is really the only set that does anything with like key counters, and I really really wish it had been like just all the way through the block, and just like there'd been more cards that like interact with key counters. I think that just would have been a good sort of like design space to work with. I don't know. 3 Kami of the Hunt, 3 mana for a 2/2. If whenever you play a Spirit Arcane spell, gets +1/+1 turn. It's kind of, it's fine. It's kind of boring, I guess. The fact that you really need to, I mean, by today's standards, you need to play at least one spell to get this kind of like on par is, I don't know. It's okay, I guess. There's better options, I think. 2 Lone Dwellers. This is okay though. So 2 mana for a 2/2. Which is good. It's not overcost at all. It's a better bear because it has an ability. Whenever you play a Spirit Arcane spell, you can put a land card from your hand into play tapped, which is actually not a terrible idea. Terrible design at all, because you play this turn 2, turn 3, maybe play a land, cast a spell, get another land into play tapped. It helps you like ramp the mana up. I think this is I think this is pretty good. I say that, I mean, just the fact he's not overcosted for his effect, I think makes him actually pretty decent. Probably one of the better green spirits in the set, honestly. So yeah, Lone Dweller's all right. The thing as well, it's not limited to basic land. It can be any land. Like if that, I mean, not doesn't matter in this deck, but it might matter in other decks. If you wanted to, put him in a constructed format. I don't know. I don't know if he ever found any use in other formats, but I don't know. Just the fact he doesn't have a limit on basic lands is pretty good. 2 Petal Made Baku, so 2 mana for a 1/2. Whenever you play a Spirit Arcane spell, get a key counter. 1, remove X key counters from it to give yourself X mana of any one color. So this is potentially a way of powering out Oyobi maybe a bit earlier than normal. So I think that's pretty fun. I actually would have liked to see maybe like another one of these in the deck, honestly, because you've got quite a few expensive spirits, and so having multiples of these definitely wouldn't have hurt, because if you have multiple out, then essentially every Spirit Arcane spell you cost, which is pretty much every card in the deck, is essentially then giving you 3 mana to use later on. So yeah, Petal Main Baku is all right, I think. And Scaled Hulk, this is just literally grown up Kami of the Hunt. It's like literally just twice the size, twice the cost, and twice the effect. I think it's better just because like it's obviously got bigger inherent stats, gets a bigger boost, but it's still kind of boring. But yeah, it's fine. And then the other rare of the deck is Kadama of the Center Tree. So 5 mana, has power and toughness equal to the number of spirits you control, which the whole deck is full of spirits, so yep, that's fine. And he has Soul Shift X, where X is the number of spirits you control. So Soul Shift being this kind of underpowered ability, in my opinion, where like if it dies, you get a spirit back from your graveyard back to your hand if it has mana value equal to the Soul Shift value. So this guy's Soul Shift value gets bigger depending on how many spirits you have. Kind of unnecessary, honestly. Because quite a lot of the spirits are fairly sort of cheap anyway. I don't know. It's okay. It feels kind of underwhelming as a rare, honestly. Because in the previous set you had Kadama of the North Tree and South Tree. Yes, it was. Yeah. And like the North Tree was just like a really efficiently costed like beat stick. I think it was something like a 7/4 trample or something, and it had Shroud. And the Kadama of the South Tree was whenever you played a Spirit Arcane spell, like all your whole board got +1/+1 on trample. So Kadama of the Center Tree is a little underwhelming, I think, compared to the other two. Two Lantern Kamis, just a 1/1 flying spirit for one. Perfect in this deck. Just a nice cheap spirit to trigger all your Spiritcraft abilities and also give yourself just a cheap flyer. Fine. Orb Weaver Kumo, 6 mana for a 3/4 reach. Whenever you play a Spirit Arcane spell, gets Forest Walk to end a turn. Again, just kind of overcosted, and it's a weak effect. So yeah, not too keen on Orb Weaver Kumo. And then Traproot Kami. This card was actually pretty popular in my play group for a while. So 1 green mana, 0x defender, toughness equal to the number of forests in play, and has reach. So yeah, this was actually a pretty fun card. Like the fact that it could just scale up really well with a number of forests and become like a pretty good blocker, while also being cheap to trigger Spiritcraft abilities. Yeah, Traproot Kami is all right in my. I mean, all it does is block, obviously, but it blocks fairly well. So moving on to non-creature spells. So all the spells in here are arcane spells, which is good. So they trigger all your Spiritcraft effects. So we have 2 Blessed Breath, just instant for 1 white that gives a creature you control protection from the color of your choice until turn. Yep, super good. Giving protection at instant speed, especially for only 1 mana, is a really strong effect. Has splice onto arcane for only 1 white, so it's a really cheap effect to splice onto another spell. Unlike a lot of the other Kamigawa decks, like pretty much every non-spell card in the deck is arcane. So this actually might be the deck where you actually get to use the splice mechanic actually, a fair amount. So yeah, Blessed Breath is pretty good, I think. Otherworldly Journey is pretty good as well. It's 2 mana. It flickers something. No, blinks. I always get them mixed up. Flicker is you exile and it comes back straight away. Blink is you exile it and it comes back at end of turn. So it's like longer. It's longer than a flicker, it's a blink. But yeah, whatever you exile comes back with a +1/+1 counter on it, so use it on your own stuff to avoid removal and come back stronger, or get an opponent's creature out of the way for a turn, which might win you the game. 2 Tarashi's Verdict, 2 mana, arcane instant, destroy an attacking creature with power 3 or less. This is okay. It's basically completely fine. I've said it before. I'm actually really salty that we still to this day have not had a card for Tarashi. Because Tarashi is meant to be, I think, like the Kami of the sun. So potentially like a really big, important, powerful spirit, and like even in like nostalgia sets like Modern Horizons or Commander Legends products, we've never had a Tarashi, which is weird because there's like 3 or 4 cards that mention him. That's a slight tangent, and like that's a personal beef I had that we never had a Tarashi, the Sun Kami, as a card. Probably would have been underwhelming if printed in original Kamigawa, but yeah. And then two Kadama's Might. This is just the pump spell of the block. 1 green mana gives +2/+2 and has splice for a single green. So yep, perfectly fine. Now, Roar of Jukai. So 3 mana arcane instant. If you control a forest, each blocked creature gets +2/+2 to end of turn, and you can splice it by only paying 5 life. This is okay, I think. If all your creatures are attacking and getting blocked, and do this. 3 mana to give everything +2. Well, no, it's not everything. It's all your blocked stuff +2/+2. Not dreadful. I kind of wish it gave trample as well, because I feel like that's the ideal use for it, is to give trample as well. But I think it's fine, and the fact it can be spliced onto another spell for free, giving your opponent life is like quite a small compromise to make. So yeah, I think this is okay. 2 Unchecked Growth. I used to really like this card, and now looking back on it, I'm not sure why. Because 3 mana for +4/+4, which is like quite expensive, I think, for a +4/+4 buff. And then if it's spirit, it also gets trample. So like 3 mana for +4/+4 and trample is, I think, actually a little bit expensive, I would say. Especially when like the trample is conditional, but it's fine. It's perfectly fine. I have no idea why it's uncommon as well. That's a weird choice to make. Anyway, Unchecked Growth is okay. And then 2 Vital Surges, 2 mana, arcane instant. You gain 3 life and splice onto arcane for 2 mana. This is obviously quite overcosted and pretty weak. Like paying 2 mana for 3 life is not great. Even the splice, if that splice was like a single green, I could maybe make the argument for it. If it just dropped the colorless mana, if it was 1 green for 3 life and splice onto arcane for a single green, Yeah, I guess, sure, that'd be fine. But as is, no, I think this is a pretty weak card. Um, and then a single wear away. This just naturalized with wear away, perfectly fine, and it's arcane, so it triggers all your stuff. Yeah, okay, perfectly fine. So it could have been. I mean, as you can probably tell, I mean, I've been saying yes, perfectly fine a lot with this deck, and I think that's really it. It's just, I think it's just a very average deck. There's definitely some changes that can make to it. You've got like the Horizon Seed and the Kami of Tattered Shoji, who are pretty weak cards. So some potential changes. I won't go through all of them in too much detail. Fort Branch Garami, I'm really surprised it's not in here because it's really decent. It's 5 mana for a 4/4, which is really decently sized for the time, and it has Soul Shift 4 twice. So when it dies, you get 2 spirits back. So yeah, really surprised that wasn't in here because that would have been a fun card to show off and like obviously get more stuff back, and it's a decent size. Yeah, I don't know why it wasn't in here. Genja of the Fields, Genja of the Cedars. I can understand maybe why these went in here because they turn, you put them on a land and they turn the land into a spirit. But really, the whole deck is around casting spirit arcane spells, and like these unfortunately are not spirit or arcane spells, so I could see maybe why they went in there, but still would have been okay to have them, I think. Hanakami, really surprised this wasn't here. So it's a really cheap spirit, and you can sacrifice to get an arcane card back, so this deck really wants that, honestly. Kadama's Reach, it's just an arcane sorcery that gets you land. Yeah, perfectly fine. Jade Idol is an artifact that turns into a 4/4 creature whenever you play Spirit or Arcane spell, so that's okay. Soil Shaper turns a land into a 3/3 creature until end of turn when you play a Spirit or Arcane spell. Alternate rares. So I think Kadama of the Center Tree is actually pretty weak. I actually generally think either of these would have been, I think, maybe a little better. So Baku Altar is 2 mana artifact. Whenever you play a Spirit Arcane spell, it gets a key counter. 2 and tap, remove a key counter, and you get a you make a 1/1 color spirit, which is okay, I guess. And then Slumbering Torah. I don't know why the art on this always looks like unfinished to me. I don't know. But yeah, 3 mana artifact, 2 discard Spirit Arcane spell, and it becomes an XX until end turn, where X is the discarded cards mana cost. So you could discard something like the Orb Weaver Kumo or the Horizon Seed, who are kind of overcosted, and then this would be like, I don't know, like a 5/5 or a 6/6 or something. Maybe not the best use of it, but I don't know. I just think Kadama of the Center Tree is really, really underwhelming as a rare. So in summary, yeah, perfectly fine, perfectly middle of the road. C plus. Not doing anything particularly bad, not doing anything particularly exciting. Card selection is okay. There's a few duff cards, but I say if a new player picked this up, they'd, I think, be able to quickly identify what was bad and switch some stuff out. So yeah, I think Spiritcraft is basically, it's okay. Pretty forgettable, honestly. But yeah, what did you think of this deck after seeing it? Did you have this deck, and did you play with it? Did you make changes to it? Stick a comment below. You know the drill by now. But we're now done with Betrayers of Kamigawa, so we're going to move on to Saviors of Kamigawa now, which is, I'll be honest, it's going to be rough. Saviors is kind of like the prophecy of its day. So yeah, kind of not great decks coming up, honestly, but we'll power through. We'll still have fun talking about them and ragging on them because there's a lot to rag on. But we'll see that next time. But until then, thank you for watching, listening, and have a great day.